Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hi, I'm Flight Lieutenant Chris Solly and welcome to the latest RAF Inside Air podcast. In this episode, we'll be heading north to hear from the Chief Medical Officer of Scotland, Professor Sir Gregor Smith, as he explains the benefits of being an RAF reservist for all parties.
What I see is just the massive benefit that they personally get, both in terms of their careers, but also in terms of just the energy that they get from being involved there. So for me, being part of that, being part of the squadron, being part of the particular type of camaraderie that's there has just been a very special experience so far.
So I think the first thing, probably most importantly for me, is the sort of personal stuff it gives to Andy. So it's supporting him, developing his careers, his own personal development, his own professional development, his own clinical development. And that comes back into our organisation. He brings those skills back, those transferable skills, and then we learn from him.
So what you've got here, you see we've got our arms in these gloves. What we call this is a half suit. So this goes over the clinician's head, it comes all the way down to around their waist height, so we're almost inside the ATI with you, but still separated by a plastic barrier to keep us safe. So it allows us to be in there with you and do much more complicated medical procedures whilst keeping us safe.
As you've come to expect, we'll also reheat a few stories which could have slipped under your radar over the last week, and we'll be finding out who's under the hat this time with AS1 Ben Russell.
Best location you've served?
So I have deployed quite a lot. I think the best one, as bad as it sounds, was probably Iraq. I was quite young when I went to Iraq, so it was the first place I'd never seen a war zone before. That was interesting, I probably wouldn't say it was the best.
Juggling a reservist commitment with a busy civilian job is something that's part and parcel of life for thousands of reserves currently serving in the RAF. Someone who knows this firsthand is the Chief Medical Officer of Scotland, Professor Sir Gregor Smith. But far from saying it can be too hard for NHS staff to find time, he's urging more of them to join the RAF Medical Reserves, saying not only is it a boost for their careers as individuals, but to the health service as a whole. Inside Air's AS1 Ben Russell has been to talk with him and to find out more about RAF medics in both a regular and reserve capacity.
So I've just arrived at the Golden Jubilee Conference Hotel in Glasgow, which is also joined to the Golden Jubilee Hospital. And that's quite fitting because today is hosting a big medical conference and I'm here to catch up with one of the speakers, Professor Sir Gregor Smith, who, as well as being the Chief Medical Officer of Scotland, also happens to be Honorary Air Commodore of 612 Medical Reserve Squadron. So let's head inside and see if we can find him.
Now, it's absolutely bustling in here. There's stands dotted all around the room showing various medical services and different technologies, and everyone's looking round and chatting to each other. And I've just spotted the Honorary Air Commodore, so I'm going to go and see if I can grab a word with him.
Sir, how's it going?
Wow, what a day. This is absolutely fantastic. So I guess we're here today at the kind of Retrieval 2025 National Pre-Hospital and Critical Care Conference. And you can hear the buzz in this room just now. Everybody's having conversations, everybody's eager to speak to each other, and it's just been wonderful, the programme so far.
And I know you're here to speak very much about your two roles, your role as Chief Medical Officer, but also your reserves life as well. Can we go somewhere and have a quick chat about that?
Let's go and have a chat. There's so much to talk about.
Let's do it.
So today we're at a wonderful conference just outside Glasgow called Retrieval, and it's all about pre-hospital critical care here. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to meet as many delegates as we can today, just to hear their perspectives on how care is going, but also introduce them to the concept of the medical reserves. And what I want to try to do and convey when I'm speaking to people today is actually just the wonderful opportunities that many of them will have in thinking about careers in the medical reserves, because I think it complements very nicely the work that they're doing within their NHS roles.
And you're kind of here with two hats on today, aren't you? So you're here as Chief Medical Officer, kind of primarily. So just tell me a little bit about what that role entails and how you came to get that role.
So I've got the wonderful privilege of being the Chief Medical Officer for Scotland. I've done this role for just over 5 years now. I took over just towards the beginning of the pandemic. In fact, I think we were literally about 10 days into lockdown when I took over the role at that point. Before that, I'd been the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for 5 years as well. It's a privilege, as I say, to do this role. It's a role which really involves me being the independent principal clinical advisor to Scottish ministers and to Scottish Government, but also the head of the medical profession in Scotland as well. And it allows me to kind of engage right across Scotland with teams from all clinical backgrounds and professions, just to look at the way that we're delivering care to the population of Scotland.
So on top of that job, you're also a reservist. So like all reservists, you kind of live two lives. Tell me about your work in a reserve capacity.
You know, a couple of years ago, I got this opportunity and an invite to go along to kind of the Lookers base in Fife to see a demonstration of some of the work from 612 Squadron, RAF Medical Reserves. And I went along with an open mind, really interested in seeing exactly how this group of people, largely from the NHS, were actually kind of had this dual role. I've got to say that it blew my mind what I saw that day. It really blew my mind. One of the things that I noticed first of all was just the general buzz when you got into the room with the people, the energy that was there. I received a very kind invite to kind of become more involved and was appointed as the Honorary Air Commodore for the squadron. Now, that's a huge privilege and honour for me to be in that role. But what it does is it means that myself, as a civilian, as a medical reserve, I get to be able to provide that link role back to the community more than anything else, and particularly in the context of being Chief Medical Officer with the clinical community across Scotland. I think there's a huge advantage for the NHS in being able to donate and support some of their staff to the medical reserves. But there's a reciprocity in that as well, because from my experience of working with the guys in the squadron, what I see is just the massive benefit that they personally get, both in terms of their careers, but also in terms of just the energy that they get from being involved there. So for me, being part of that, being part of the squadron, being part of the particular type of camaraderie that's there has just been a very special experience so far.
And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think for many reservists, they work all week. At the weekend, they go and do something completely different, for a complete change from what they do sort of 9 to 5 during the week. For the medical reserves, that's not the case, is it? You're kind of very much, it's like a busman's holiday. You're going to do like this sort of a similar job. In that respect, kind of what's the motivation for medical professionals to take up a reserve role?
So one of the things I'm noticing with the people that I'm having the conversations with, and as I've got to know people in the squadron, what I see is talented, ambitious, motivated people there who love their job. And, you know, all of us know, anyone that's working within a clinical background just now knows that it's sometimes gets tough, and sometimes it's a job that's tiring and it's not easy. But when you've got an outside interest, something like the medical reserves, what I'm seeing is that these guys have something else to focus upon as well, something that's positive, something that brings energy into their life. And I think there's a number of reasons why they get that. First of all is the access to, what I can only describe as world-leading training. When I see what goes on in those training weekends, when I see the exercising that the squadron undertakes, both internally but also with external partners and even international partners. When I see what people get from that, you can see why people are attracted to this as almost as a kind of second type of career. The other thing I notice about them is the confidence and the leadership capabilities that they develop over that time as well. We've got people of all ages in the squadron, but one of the things that's very noticeable to me is that even the younger members of the squadron have a certain a way that they carry themselves, the way that they're able to convey their instructions, the way that they're able to lead, that I very seldom see. This is a high-performing team, and I think what people gain from this is the ability to be part of that high-performing team, learn from others, and develop that skill set for themselves. And of course, that's transferable. What they're then able to do is they're then able to take that back to their NHS teams as well. And I hear regularly feedback from within the NHS about such and such who's a medical reserve. They bring something different because of these additional qualities that they're learning in the training weekends.
So they're kind of like qualities of leadership and teamwork and those kind of things. In terms of medical skills transferable between both the RAF and between the NHS, do you see a kind of symbiotic two-way share of expertise?
Well, I think symbiosis is the perfect term for that there as well, because clearly there are skills that people develop within the NHS that are absolutely necessary in a squadron, such as the Royal Auxiliary Air Force Medical Reserves. And what I see from the range of professions who are involved, them bringing their skills in, sharing the skills, teaching others in a way that's absolutely necessary. But it would be a real mistake to think that that's a one-way relationship. Reciprocity is a term I keep on using in relation to this, because this is very much, for me, a two-way street, because I see people developing clinical skills as well as leadership skills in that environment that they're then able to take back to the regular NHS jobs. That might be skills learned in deployment, it might be skills learned in relation to direct trauma care, it might be skills which go beyond that. But I have no doubt, certainly from the conversations I've had both with the people in the squadron but also with people back in the NHS, that actually working with a reserve, you begin to notice the difference in terms of the skills that they're able to transfer.
And personally, how have you found your time in the RAF so far? Do you feel like you've taken lessons back to your job?
I think one of the things for me which has been really important is coming in, first of all, recognising that actually the cultures within the RAF and the cultures within the NHS are not dissimilar. And I think one of the, perhaps before I got to know the squadron better, I would have imagined that there was a little bit of an obstacle to overcome in breaking down some of the perhaps the kind of more formal barriers that I imagined were in the military. But actually, what I've discovered is that actually that's not there, and that camaraderie is something which is really, really important in all of this. I think we've become very good at identifying in the NHS what makes a high-performing team. And one of the things that I have certainly gained from this is observing people working within the squadron at all levels of command and the way that they interact with the people around them. And for me, that's very much take the attitude that you continually learn throughout your career, but observing the people run about me and the way that they interact with each other in the squadron has been certainly something which I have really, really gained from. Still learning a bit about how to salute, when to salute, all the things and stuff like that. But do you know what? That's all very small stuff compared to just the amazing kind of sense of. I think camaraderie is probably the best single word I can use, and team working that actually defines the ethos of the squadron.
I know for a lot of people, the first time they put on the uniform and those early days of going to weekends and really sort of delving into that military side of life, even if you are taking your kind of professional skills with you, how have you felt with that military side of things?
So I'm not going to lie, that felt awkward at first. Putting on the uniform for the first time, I did feel like a complete newbie. And the one thing I would say about that, though, is the squadron were amazing and just give me a little bit of guidance as to kind of what uniform to wear when, how to wear it, the circumstances. There's an enormous pride in wearing a a Royal Air Force uniform, I have to say. And I've now had the privilege of wearing it on both informal and some very formal and poignant occasions. And any time that I pull on my uniform now, I have to say that I take a deep breath, I stand a little bit taller and a little bit straighter as a result of that, because there is something about pulling on that uniform that actually changes the way that your mindset and the way that you feel inside. So it doesn't take long for you to kind of adapt. But you have to remember, everyone around you is in exactly the same position. They've been in that same position, learning how to wear the uniform, learning how to kind of respond in the uniform, and yeah, I think it comes quickly.
And you've spoke about transferable skills in a kind of medical capacity and a leadership capacity, but something that struck me particularly about your own personal experiences. Obviously, you've spoke openly about your experiences through COVID, and you've spoken to the COVID inquiry about kind of the pressures of that time and the long hours and the kind of pressures on the team. It strikes me that there's quite a lot of similarities in terms of sort of the day-to-day working environment, like especially if you are deployed on operations and you could find yourself under that kind of pressure. And obviously, in all corners of the NHS, there's pressure on people working as paramedics in accident and emergency. Do you think there's a kind of type of grit of individual that is kind of attracted to both roles, or a compassion, or do you think there's a crossover there?
I think that's a really good question. It's one I've considered on a couple of occasions. And you're right, the response, not just that myself and my team had to COVID, but actually right across the health service, was incredibly challenging for people. People were tired, people were often scared, and certainly we were anxious as to what might happen next. I think the thing that got everybody through that, and certainly got me through it, was a sense of service, and something that it was a job that needed to be done, and needed to be done right. I think you find those qualities right across the NHS. I don't think that they're unique to just a few of us that are working within the NHS. I think actually, if you were to cut people open, you would see that sense of service running all the way through them. And it's defined and driven by our need and our want to do good for the people of our population. So I think that's what drives many of us who come to work in the NHS is just that desire to provide service and to care for people, particularly at the most vulnerable time. Now, I think that's transferable. I think that sense of service is absolutely transferable. And if you ally that to the opportunities that you can create by coming into the medical reserves, the opportunity to actually advance your career through learning transferable skills, whether they be clinical, whether they be leadership, that kind of intrinsic, innate motivation and ambition that many of us carry is a quality which I think fits with the ethos of the medical reserves very nicely.
And would you like to see more NHS staff jump into a reserve role? And what would you say to them in terms of balancing the two lives?
Earlier on you spoke about the symbiosis between the kind of the medical reserves and the NHS. I think that symbiosis is really important. I would love to see more of my colleagues becoming involved, whether it be in the RAF, whether it be in the Royal Navy, whether it be in the Army, but actually becoming involved and exposing themselves to the type of life, the type of training that these organisations can bring for them. And I say that for two reasons. The first reason, of course, is for the individual and the benefit that individual gets from it, because I think that these type of roles are career sustaining. Might seem like additionality to an already busy job, but actually I think the experience that I've had and the experience that I see of others is that they see this as something which is energy giving rather than energy sapping. People come back from a weekend motivated, they come back revitalised. Not only have they received world-class training, but they've actually spent time with like-minded people, and they've received a boost in energy for that, and they take that back into their day jobs. But of course there's also a benefit to their day job as well, because having done that, not only are they able to sustain their careers for further, but they're able to sustain their careers in a way that allows them to develop new skills, that allows them to advance in their careers, that allows the people of our country to directly benefit from those transferable skills which they bring back to the teams that they're part of within the NHS as well. So getting more and more people involved in the reserves like this, I think can only benefit both the military for the skills that they receive from the people working in the NHS, but also the NHS for the transferable skills that they then bring back as well. That symbiotic relationship, I think, has to be understood, but it's also something which has to be encouraged.
And what's the awareness like of the RAF reserves in a medical sense within the NHS? Is it something that's kind of known as an opportunity that people can do, and is it kind of held in high regard? Or what's sort of attitude towards it, and how aware are people that this exists as an option that they can do?
I think people are aware of the RAF medical reserves, but I'd like more people to be aware of it as well. There's been a piece of work with champions identified across every health board in Scotland to kind of champion the role of the reservist within the NHS, and I think that's important. I see a really important part of my role as Chief Medical Officer, but also as the hack for 612 Squadron, is to be able to kind of take that to a different level, is to be able to increase the awareness. But it's not just an increasing the awareness, because we can talk about the uniforms, the fancy toys, all these things which people get exposure to. The bottom line is that I think this is beneficial for people to become involved in. I think this is something which is career enhancing. I think that this is something which allows people to develop the careers and advance in their careers in the way that perhaps their ambitious natures would like to see. So the more we make people aware that this is an option for them, the more that we begin to kind of draw people into actually seeing what we're doing, the more we debunk some of the myths that lie round about it, then I think there's, as I say, a symbiotic mutual benefit that we can create both for the RAF in Scotland, but also for the NHS as well.
And kind of going back to the sort of medical side of things, I think the military is all really well known for being at the kind of forefront of developing medical treatment, especially when it comes to things like trauma care. And obviously, in the last 2 decades, we've had Optelic, Opheric, and, we've had a lot of that kind of operational medicine taking place. What's the lie of the land like now? Is it still the case that kind of the military is forging the way forward in that kind of medical treatment, or is the NHS sort of teaching stuff back to the military now?
Isn't it incredible? Isn't it? The tragedy of war sometimes brings about some of the greatest advances in clinical care, and I think we've got to be mindful of that. And we've seen that over recent times as well, where particularly trauma care has advanced at a huge speed because of the necessity of that war has brought. But in between times, there's a responsibility, I think, of the NHS to make sure that we are innovating, that we are keeping up with new technologies, and particularly that we're enhancing some of that learning hard won through the experience of war, and so that when we prepare for the next conflict is that we're able to offer the best care to those who have been injured as a consequence of it. And I see that happening now, whether it be the use of new techniques or whether it be the use of new materials within trauma care across Scotland. I think that the NHS is now trying to ensure that they are playing their part in advancing the type of care, learning from the experience not only of what went before, but actually of international experience around the world. We've got, I'm very well aware because I speak to them regularly, we've got many clinicians who find themselves volunteering to work in zones of conflict around the world, and I have conversations with them as recently as last week where some of the techniques that they've been able to bring back just through that volunteering even has been able to then advance some of the thinking in terms of the approach to care in the future. So I think again it's a two-way street, isn't it? There are responsibilities from everyone involved to make sure that even in times of peace and we must try to prolong that as much as we possibly can. But even in times of peace, we must make sure that we make the advances across any aspect of care. But I'm mindful of trauma care in particular for this conversation, so that in the event of a future conflict, we can give the best care possible to our armed forces and, of course, any civilians who are caught up in that.
And just the kind of the picture of reservists within the RAF in a medical capacity, to what extent does the RAF rely on reservists to make up those numbers? And are there any skills in particular that are sought after within the RAF?
I think one of the interesting things I'm seeing and learning since I came into the squadron was actually the way that we deploy. And we have members of the squadron who are deployed almost at any point in time. The squadron doesn't tend to deploy as a whole, but actually has people with specialist skills which slot into a particular identified need. And I think that's important that actually we maintain that broad skill set across the squadron for that reason. When you look at the makeup of the squadron, it's perhaps not as people might first imagine. Actually, there's a really broad range of clinical professions who make up the squadron. We've got nurses, we've got paramedics, we've got doctors, we've got physiotherapists, we've got pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. We've got a whole range of people who, each of whom is able to kind of develop that skill set to be able to kind of deploy when it's required for a particular need. In terms of what we need for the future, I think what I'm certainly keen to do is that we maintain and increase our complement of staff across the squadron for the future. I think it's particularly keen that we increase our quota of nursing and paramedic staff, and there's one or two particularly medical specialties that I would also like to see more of within the squadron as well, not least emergency medicine specialists there as well. But it's the variety and the breadth of the skills that we have there which actually make up the kind of the total complement of skill in the practice. In the practice, it just seems like a small practice or a small hospital. You get used to it's some people listen to this will recognise that that sense that you get when you've been in a team for a little while. You know how each other work. You've developed the relationships with each other, the trust that exists, and that's what it feels like in the squadron at times. It's just like a kind of mini hospital or a mini practice where people get to know each other. You trust their skill set, and actually you get to know them and trust them as people as well. And I guess that's particularly important in the context of the military reserves too. And
throughout the rest of your RAF career, what are you hoping to achieve with that role, and personally, what would you like to do?
For me, in terms of the time that I'm going to spend in this wonderful role of the Honorary Air Commodore for 612 Squadron, well, first of all, I've got learning that I want to take on board as well, because the same skills that other people are learning in the squadron, I'm still learning too. So whether they be leadership skills, whether they be some of the clinical skills that I'm watching people kind of learn and develop, all of that I am drinking in as well. But I think if I had to achieve one thing for the squadron, one thing that I'm particularly keen to do, I want to raise the profile of the squadron amongst our NHS staff. I want to see people from the NHS in Scotland and in other parts of the UK as well, because let's not forget, people come to the medical reserves not just from the local communities, but actually many of them travel many hours on a regular basis just to be part of that training. What I want to see is more and more people from the NHS becoming involved in this way, because I truly believe that this is beneficial, not only for the military in terms of enhancing their capacity and capability in clinical care, but also to make sure that the NHS people who are involved are taking those skills that they're developing directly back to benefit patient care across the UK as well.
And I'm aware we're going to have to wrap this up because you've got a presentation to make. Just tell me a little bit about if that's a message that you're going to be sharing in that presentation, and a bit about what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, so presentation today. I've got the great privilege of being able to speak to this retrieval conference today. And I'm going to say a little bit about how I ended up where I am. But the central message that I'm going to be kind of giving to delegates here is I guess threefold. First of all, the medical reserves are there. They offer world-leading training which people can access and will enhance their careers, their ability to provide clinical care for the future. The second thing is they will be able to take those transferable skills directly back into their day job so that the care that they're providing within the NHS benefits as well. And the last message I got is that I think that this is career enhancing. This is something which is career sustaining. Not only will it equip you to make advances in your own career, but I think, and this is, I think, sometimes overlooked, I think having outside interests like this, and particularly the sense of service, providing something, volunteering in this way, I think that is something which sustains people's careers over difficult times. An outside interest like this is really beneficial for people, and I would encourage people who are listening to this who are not involved just now to go along, to talk to a reservist, to find out a little bit more about what's happening, and to come and try it, because I think that once you've seen exactly what it gives to people, it's something you would be really tempted to.
Sir, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm going to let you go and get ready for your presentation.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight speaking to you today.
So Sir Gregor is just starting his presentation. I'm going to head inside, have a listen, and then I'll catch up with him afterwards.
Why I become so involved with the RAF Medical Reserves and give you some reflections.
So just caught your presentation. How did it go?
Oh, that was excellent. I really enjoyed being able to speak to the audience today about the medical reserves and the RAF in particular. My experience, having been hack for some time now, but actually seeing the way that the guys have developed in the squadron since I came in. And you know, one of the really interesting things afterwards was actually the connections that you make with people in the conversations who've come up to speak to me afterwards. People who have either been former regulars or former reserves, who so identify with some of the central messages that we've given round about the potential for development that people have when they come into the reserves.
Well, do you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to go and meet some of the other guys and find out kind of their experiences of their life in the reserves.
Excellent. Go and have good conversations.
Catch you later. I'm here with AS1 Lynch. We've been talking a lot about kind of the value that can go between the NHS and for the reserves as well. You're someone who's really got an interesting story about that. Tell me about your journey.
So I joined the RAF Medical Reserves 4 or 5 years ago now, and I think it's the best decision that I've made in my professional career. I joined because I wanted to be developed personally and professionally, and I think that's two things that I've had from the reserves in the short time that I've been in. I think some of the training that you get is you just never have that in your civilian life, and it'd be so difficult to access that as well, but it's offered so freely as a reservist. I think some of the key things is the leadership training that I've had, as well as all of the really niche specific things like air medical evacuation training that you just wouldn't get in your civilian job unless you worked on an air ambulance. I would fully say that. So I'm now working as an air ambulance paramedic up in Scotland on Henrymed 79, and I completely feel like I am where I am now because of being a reservist. So I was a paramedic on a normal road ambulance, absolutely loved that. However, I knew that I wanted to join the air ambulance service if I could. So what I done was I joined the RAF Medical Reserves to help with that, as well as developing me as a person. The training that I received very early in the reserves was air medical evacuation training, which involved live flying as well, and that really, I would say, gave me the edge on other candidates and gave me a lot to speak about, as well as strengthening my understanding and underpinning knowledge of air medical evacuation, from logistics to aircraft considerations to how to look after my patient in the air and the changes that their body may undergo as well. So I think it's really second to none, the training that I've had, and it's benefited me so much in my civilian role.
And now you are doing that role as a paramedic on an air ambulance. Is that something you kind of bring back to the reserves? And those skills sound like they really complement each other both ways.
Definitely, yes. I think what I find the most fortunate thing about our reserve squadron is we have so many clinicians from so many backgrounds, and we all do such different jobs, and that's really nice because every training weekend we can then go and teach each other, and you learn so much from the other healthcare disciplines. So I think on a very routinely basis we're teaching each other for things that we wouldn't normally interact. I think that just makes us better and well-rounded clinicians and professionals.
So you have a really busy week, and then the weekend comes round and it's time to attend a training weekend. What's a typical training weekend look like for you guys?
Yeah, so obviously NHS jobs are very busy and we're under extreme pressure now, and that was definitely one of my concerns when I did join the reserves, thinking, am I going to have the time to do this, but is it also going to burn me out? What I found is the exact opposite. So being a reservist sustains me in my NHS employment because it's like a break from reality, but you're still at work doing something different, which is really, really nice. It's a typical training weekend for us is really quite varied. We have a training plan that is published a year in advance. We know what we're going to be doing. So some weekends may be leadership orientated to empower us to be better ourselves as leaders. Other weekends will be aeromedical or pre-hospital emergency care, or it might be a session delivered by the medical officers, dental officers or the nurses. Other training weekends, so like the next upcoming one, we're visiting Scotland's secret bunker, and then we're going canyoning the next day. So some really good force development and adventure training opportunities, which definitely sustain us as people and develop our confidence and abilities in dealing with ambiguity is a big one.
And within the NHS, how well known is the kind of the option that you can do? You can become an RAF medical reserve. Is that something that's well known among colleagues? And what do they think about you? What do the other guys on the air ambulance think about your other life?
So I actually always say that being a reservist in the Royal Air Force Medical Reserves and from the NHS is the best kept secret. I think that we all think it's very widely publicised, but actually so many people don't know about it, and that's quite nice because when people learn that I am a reservist, they want to know more about it and they ask more about it. I'm so fortunate that my employer is a gold member of the Armed Forces Covenant, and they support us really well, and I get additional unpaid leave to go and do that, and so my team at work are so supportive of this, and they appreciate that what I'm doing at the weekends I can bring back to my day job and help further them and better the service.
And if one of your colleagues, is aware this exists and they're kind of considering it, what would you say to them?
So I would say give it a try. If you get in touch with the recruiters, it's not a right sign here, you're in. It's very much a get to know you, get to know us, and see if it is for you, because it isn't for everyone, but certainly we're such a varied group in the squadron that you realise that it's not your standard typical military person that joins us. It is your clinician in NHS Scotland that wants to do more, or so the NHS as a whole. I would say, give it a shot and speak to people that do your similar job within the reserve squadron as well, and just learn their experiences, and that's the big thing.
What's the best thing you've done so far in the reserves?
So the best thing I think I've done since joining the reserves, we have a very close relationship with a sister squadron in the US Air Force called the 911th Squadron. They're an aeromedical evacuation reserve squadron as well. So training with them is fantastic. We get to work with another NATO country and we learn their aeromedical evacuation procedures, fly on their aircraft, and really just get to know them as individuals as well. And I think the relationships that we form with them are so important, and the benefit of that training is massive, and it's definitely changed me as a person. It's fantastic.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Kira. I'll let you enjoy the rest of the conference now.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
So my name is Andrew Duncan, and my civvy job, I'm an air ambulance paramedic in the northwest of England, and in the reservists I am a paramedic.
Hi, I'm Steve Bell. I'm consultant paramedic with the Northwest Ambulance Service, and also the consultant HEMS paramedic with the Northwest Air Ambulance Service.
So interestingly enough, we've got one of you's in uniform, one of you isn't, and an interesting relationship between the two of you. It's actually employee and employer, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, as an employer, what do you find having a reserve brings to you?
So I think the first thing, probably most importantly for me, is the sort of personal stuff it gives to Andy. So it's supporting him, developing his careers, his own personal development, his own professional development, his own clinical development. And that comes back into our organisation. He brings those skills back, those transferable skills, and then we learn from him. Similarly, I think there is a little bit of a two-way process. We were talking earlier to one of your colleagues about maybe needing to reinforce that, maybe we need to do that a bit better, where we can give back to the reservists. and we can provide the skills that we're doing on a daily basis back to those. But yeah, for me, I think it's that two-way street amongst that.
And how do you find that? Do you find juggling those two roles is kind of a thing that comes easy to you?
Yeah, I think with practice, I think a supportive employer is essential, and I think that's incumbent on the reservist to sort of, for want of a better word, educate your employee, because reserves is quite a niche area that not many people know a lot about. But if you've got a supportive employer and you're open and frank with each other, I think the balance in the two isn't really that much of a chore. It integrates nicely into your life, really.
And as an employer, is that something you'd agree with? Is it kind of easy to facilitate if people do want to kind of have that reserve commitment on top of their civilian role?
I think yes is the short answer. I think if there's organisational commitment to do that and there's a will to do that, there is. I think in our situation with Andy, when he deployed last year, that was actually a challenge to us because we probably hadn't done the succession planning that we should have done, so we hadn't put that in place. So that was something that Andy was tasked to sort out himself before he was to go on the deployment. But actually that was really good learning for me as like the employer, if you like, the line manager, but also good learning for us organisationally to be able to take that, for the next reservist or for the next department or for the next directorate that wants to do that.
And is this your first experience of having an employee who is in the reserves?
Yes, I think as a direct report it is, yeah. So I've worked in teams where other people have been reservists, but I think Andy is my first direct report to have been in part of the reserve regiment.
It's something, if more of your staff wanted to do, you'd encourage it potentially?
Absolutely encourage it. Facilitating it operationally is a different question, but absolutely encourage it, and certainly wouldn't find any barriers within our team. I don't think within our organisation, to be honest.
And to employers that might have reservations about it, what would your kind of advice be to them?
I think you probably have to accept that there's no one-size-fits-all answer, so every employee, every organisation is going to have different priorities and different take on this. But I don't think it's something people should be scared of. I don't think there's any barriers to it. I think if you look at it as that sort of two-way street in terms of you're going to gain from it as much as the individual's going to gain from it, then you should embrace it. And I think, it's an old cliche, but if there's a will, there's a way to make it work, and it should absolutely be encouraged.
And as someone who's in the reserves, making that juggle between the two roles, what would your advice be to people who maybe are trying to kind of get the benefits over to their employer and also manage their own time and make that kind of lessen the impacts on their civilian role?
I think the key point there is about being proactive. You've got to take ownership. Take ownership of it and manage it with your employer. Engage with your employer and talk to them. If you want to sit back and let other people sort things out for you, then reserves is probably not for you. But even having said that, it's not an arduous task. It's just about good people skills, people talking openly to each other and compromising where it's possible. You can't have everything all your own way. So there's always a compromise in there somewhere. And if that benefits your employer and benefits you, then that's the sweet spot, isn't it, really?
So my name's Flying Officer Rob Tapscott. I've been in the Air Force now for 21 years. I started my career as a pharmacy tech. I'd done 20 years as a pharmacy technician, and then graduated last September as a medical support officer.
That's really interesting. And so today I've spoken to a lot of reserves, and I've spoken to some regulars, and I've spoken to employers, and I think there's a lot of talk about how kind of the reserve role really complements the civilian job and vice versa. But as someone who's been in the RAF as a regular for 20 years, how do you find, what do reserves bring to the force, do you think?
I think as the numbers of the Royal Air Force medical services regulars have decreased over time, and for the amount we're required to support, whether it's operations or exercises at home or overseas, it's so important to have that reserve contingency to bolster our numbers. With their experiences within the NHS, obviously as a medical services reserve, they already need to be qualified. So they're already at the top of their profession within their clinical fields. They bring the most up-to-date information to our clinicians within the Royal Air Force regulars medical services. And then in turn, we then give them that leadership element to operating in austere environments and leading teams.
And how are they received alongside their regular counterparts?
When they deploy on exercise or overseas on operations, there's no difference. So when they deploy, there's no regular reserves, it's just the Royal Air Force Medical Services. I've deployed overseas with the reserves, and you wouldn't be able to tell. The transition is seamless.
And do you find generally they kind of embrace the military aspect, because they're obviously professionals, they're doing the same job in Civvy Street as they are within the force itself? How do they grasp that kind of military world, stepping into that military world?
I think they bring, it's so inspiring that they bring such a high level of enthusiasm. Because at the end of the day, they volunteer, this isn't their main career. They're extremely busy clinicians within the NHS, majority of the NHS, and they bring that energy. They volunteer to be where they are, so they bring that to the regular service and the regular clinicians, which only increases productivity.
And do you think, what is it they take back? Because they obviously do their day job, you know, in the week, and then they'll come on a weekend, or they'll deploy. What is it they take back to their civilian job, do you think, that the RAF gives them and in turn gives to employers?
I think that's a really good question. With regards to what the NHS get back from us, they become better leaders. They become more team orientated, and also being able to operate in austere environments that can change at a flick of a finger. We don't know what we're getting through the door on operations, going from crashes to infectious diseases. We never know. So bringing that utility and that flexibility, it would be a fantastic bonus for the NHS.
My name's Paul. I'm an AS1 at 612 Squadron based in Lookers in Scotland, and my full-time role is with Scottish Ambulance Service as a paramedic.
So we were chatting a bit earlier about kind of your day-to-day role, and like it just blows my mind, the kind of part of the course day you just go and see some quite, you know, challenging circumstances. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a paramedic.
Okay, so being a paramedic it's a really diverse job. No 2 days are the same. They're very, very different. We meet a wide range of different people from different backgrounds. And I think that the role can be quite challenging based on a number of factors. And that can be from leadership skills to managing scenes, maintaining your persona to stay calm in certain situations. And I think that's something that's really tied in very, very nicely with being a reservist. Likewise, I bring a lot of skills to the table to the Royal Air Force Reserves, but likewise the Reserves has benefited me massively within my civilian employment. And definitely from a progression point of view, I wouldn't be in the job that I'm in now, certainly without the Reserves adding those qualities.
And obviously we're here today, people are kind of not in the Reserves, they're coming over to you guys talking about recruitment, talking about how to get involved. What was it that made you think, I want to do this, like I want to go to training weekends and I want to be involved in the RAF?
So I think for me, I certainly have no military experience at all. I'm not from a military family. I don't have any other members of my family that have previously been in the military, and it's something that I never thought I would almost do. But I can gladly say 100% it was the best decision that I ever have made. The development that I've seen in the kind of short time that I have been in the Reserves is absolutely incredible. Again, from my own personality, developing my skills to carry over to my civilian job, and basically just get the best out of me as a person. So I think that's the kind of nice thing about the Reserves. And I would definitely recommend to anybody to join up and take the chance in doing that. It's the opportunities that you get from an education point of view, visiting different places of the world, but I think the most important thing is the people within 612 Squadron, which definitely is a massive retention factor in keeping us there, and we learn a lot off of each other, so it's the people definitely the big thing for me.
And obviously there's loads of benefits to becoming a medical reserve in terms of that professional development and those skills you're building. If you've had a long week in your civilian job and then you've got Friday, right, I've got to get my kit together to go on a training weekend, how does that feel? Is that something that is kind of extra effort? Because the people I've spoken to today seem to kind of feel like it's a bit of a revitalisation in a way and a bit of an escape, but it's also, some people might think this is just a continuation of the working week. How do you find that?
So I say it's a massive break from my day job, which is uber stressful at times. And again, going back to my previous point about the people, it's them that make me want to come to almost every training weekend when I can manage. And of course, yes, it is an added task to prepare uniform, etc. But it's definitely not a thankless task. I think it's definitely rewarding, and you definitely get out what you put in. And again, I don't see it as being a stressor personally, because I take a lot from it. So yeah, I wouldn't let that put you off in any way, shape or form.
Hi, I'm Flight Sergeant Neil White. I'm from Headquarter Medical Reserves Wing at RAF Wittering, and I've been with the Medical Reserves now for approximately 15 years.
And the fact that we're standing here in this hotel with this rather magnificent looking RAF Medical Reserves stand, and that you're the sponsor of the event, is kind of in part to your efforts, isn't it? Tell me a bit about what we're doing today.
Yeah, well, previously we've been exhibitors at this event for roughly about 12 years, and what we wanted to do was think out the box a little bit and think how we can engage a little bit more with the wider National Health Service. So we approached them to become gold sponsor for the event, which they accepted, and that brings us here to the event as sponsors.
And tell me about the event. Why is it a particularly relevant one to the Medical Reserves?
Yeah. This event is all about pre-hospital and critical care transfer, and again, it's a direct capability role that the Royal Air Force Medical Services are undertaking as well. So it just makes sense for us to be the sponsor for this event.
Why is it important to kind of spread the word of what you do in a reserves capacity, do you think?
Our medical reservists do work in the National Health Service, and I think what is key at this conference to do is identify the skills that reservists take back to the National Health Service, because the skills are directly transferable, and we are working together in a small healthcare environment, and we all need to be working together.
And I understand, as well as kind of talking to people here at the stand, you've got some of the kind of practical tech and vehicles that you use. Tell me about what we can kind of have a look at later on.
Yeah, so Tactical Medical Wing are actually here, and they're going to demonstrate through a practical exercise this afternoon the air transportable isolator. So that is all about how the Royal Air Force transport people with suspected or with infectious diseases. So I think it's going to be really popular at the conference today. Lots of people are really interested in this topic at the moment. So hopefully it's going to be really popular with some good feedback.
Now, there's RAF Medical Reserves currently employed on high readiness reserve contracts to undertake aeromedical duties like supporting the Tactical Medical Wing, and as Flight Sergeant White mentioned, they're here today doing demonstrations. Now, there's one going on at the moment, but they've said after the next one's done, they'll let me have a look firsthand at what they do. So as soon as I see the crowd come out, I'll head in.
So, Squadron Leader Cooling, we're here with what looks like a very heavy-duty stretcher and something I'm not quite sure what it is, so could you describe it for me?
Yeah, sure. It's the air transportable isolator, and what it is, it's basically a hospital bed on wheels inside a plastic bubble with a couple of air filters on it and then a big air pump underneath. And what we use this for is to transport patients with what we call high consequence diseases, something like Ebola.
Wow, okay, and this is how you would get somebody who's infected with Ebola out of that area and away to treatment?
Yeah, so this is the UK's capability to repatriate any patient that has one of these diseases.
And kind of it's laid out in a sort of the way you would do this whole process, isn't it?
Yeah, so what we've got is a clean, dirty line, and that is the area which no one can cross unless they're in full head-to-foot PPE. And then we've got the stretcher, which the patient will be loaded into. We'll pick them up and then load them into the ATI, seal it, and then we're safe once they're sealed inside the ATI.
So can I test my acting skills, pretend I've contracted Ebola, and kind of be a bit of a guinea pig to see how this works?
Yeah, absolutely. Step onto my stretcher.
Right, will do. So we've got some volunteers who are going to help lift me up. So you would get the patient on the stretcher like this. So it's been lying down. So I'm being buckled in at the moment with the buckles you'd get on an aircraft.
So yeah, what they're doing is it's normal aircraft straps, and we've got several of these which go over your body like this, And then if my friend there can just pass me that one, there we go, and that'll stop you sliding out. So we've actually got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straps in total.
Okay, so I'm fully strapped down on the stretcher now.
There we go.
So I'm not moving. I'm not rolling off this.
So it takes 4 people to lift this, and then another 6 in the ATI to receive the stretcher into the ATI. So the only thing crossing the line will be yourself on the stretcher. We'll stay this side on the dirty side. Everyone else stays on the clean side. So, guys, if you want to grab hold of, it's just like being back at RAF Holton. That's a good position. So it'll be ready to lift, and then lift will be the order. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Okay, ready to lift? Lift.
Oh, there we go. That's me airborne and making my way towards this this bubble. So this is where we'd be crossing the decontamination line.
We're at the clean dirty line now. So what we'd do is we'd have 6 people around the air transportable isolator, and then we stay on this side. We'll just shuffle our hands together and pass the stretcher over the line into the isolator, and the guys in the isolator will receive it and then bolt it down so you can't go anywhere.
Right, so the next step is getting inside.
Next step's getting inside. Okay.
So I am now sliding in to the ATI, and this is quite strange. So I'm sort of feel a little bit like E.T. when he was being treated. What I can see from the inside are the kind of gloves that you would handle kind of nuclear material with. Tell me what's happening. Let me see if I can hear you from in here.
Okay, yeah, this is one of the big challenges, is can the patient hear us? We're talking through plastic, we've got aircraft noise going. The ATI is actually switched off at the moment. If we switch the pumps on, it'll get even noisier. So we have to talk really loudly, almost shouting at the patient and shouting to each other as we work.
Right, so because I'm struggling to, I can hear you fine, but just so we can still pick you up, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the treatment and then get you to turn the pumps on to get that full experience.
Okay.
So what have we got here? We've got gloves, and there's kind of a big... What's this? Tell me what I'm saying. This is a big kind of baggy piece of material that's hanging in to the ATI with me. So I can see these here are gloves, but what's this?
So what you've got here, you see we've got our arms in these gloves. What we call this is a half suit. So this goes over the clinician's head. It comes all the way down to around their waist height. So we're almost inside the ATI with you, but still separated by a plastic barrier to keep us safe. So it allows us to be in there with you and do much more complicated medical procedures whilst keeping us safe.
And I mean, it's pretty daunting being in here for me, the patient, but it must be extremely difficult to do your job under these conditions.
Oh yeah, so there is a limit of what we can actually do for patients inside this. I mean, don't get me wrong, we can do a lot, but there's a lot we can't do as well. So before we put you inside, we're going to make sure you're really well prepared outside, then put you in, and then we're going to have a lot of stuff prepared inside here and hidden away, so we can do stuff if we need to.
Okay, so if I was in here for real, you'd be firing the pumps up, or presumably they'd already be running.
Yeah, as soon as you are passed in by the team and the stretcher goes down, then the pumps would go on to make sure that air is being circulated and cleaned.
Could we have a go with it on?
Yeah, my colleague Emma's just going to switch it on.
Oh, so lights have come on.
Yeah, so there you go. The motors have spun up now. Lights are on. You can see actually like they're kind of like in your face a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And this now is circulating air quite regularly. Comes in this side by your head, goes all the way down the bottom, and then it exhausts out the bottom by your feet. So you've got that constant airflow through. It's filtered in, it's filtered out, so that keeps us nice and safe.
So this is kind of what you'd get on a kind of a polytunnel or maybe a cheaper greenhouse kind of fabric. What happens if this is compromised and it gets ripped?
We practice that every single time. You'll see around you there's sellotape type stuff stuck on the walls everywhere. So the horizontal sellotape is on the inside with you, the vertical sellotape is on the outside with me. If we spot a hole, someone shouts breach, 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 we put a hand on the hole and then we stick the sellotape on from both sides. So you'll stick some on, I'll stick some on. We use cleaning chemicals all over it. We wash our hands a lot and then we're resealed. It's actually really safe because those pumps are sucking the air in towards you. So even if we get a hole, the only way anything is going is in towards you.
Oh, well, okay. So it's almost vacuum packed. Not quite, but...
Not quite. I can turn up the pump a bit and try and vacuum pack you.
Right. So let me just kind of have a look around. So I've got, there's lights. So there's a row of lights above me. And I can see some tape on the side, like you would get if it was ripped. And presumably this is now, I'd be kind of undergoing care. How long would you expect a patient to be in here?
Probably in the region of about 12 hours. We've got to fly back to the United Kingdom, depending back where we're coming from, and then we've got to get you to the Royal Free Hospital.
Right, okay, and I mean, that's an amazing thought to be in here for 12 hours. Obviously, how does it work with, the toilet breaks and that kind of thing for a patient?
Right, so for a toilet break, I'm afraid we are going to give you a bedpan. Will be nice, we'll hold up a bivvy sheet around the outside of the ATI so no one can look in. But you are going to have to basically just go for a poop in a pan. And then there's, right down by your feet, there's a little waste chute. What we'll do is we'll scrunch it all up, shove it down the waste chute, dry it out with some chemicals, and then fold it over so you can't smell it.
Well, I'm going to kind of leave the realism at this point. You mentioned, so the kind of purpose of this is to get me to the hospital. So what would the next stage of this journey be?
So once we land back in the UK, RAF Norfolk look after us, we land in there, we will have what we call a jumbulance waiting, which is a giant ambulance, and then we will load the ATI straight from the aircraft into the back of the jumbulance. The police will clear the roads for us, and we will just hightail it on blue lights straight to the Royal Free Hospital. When we arrive there, we'll have the NHS waiting for us, and then we can take you straight into the hospital and transfer you to the NHS bed.
Okay, well, I love the name Jumbulance, and I couldn't help but notice there's one parked outside. So can we go and have a quick look at the next stage of the journey? Right, so I haven't made the guys actually drag me outside in the ATI. We're walking under our own steam. There's a few people with us because everyone's really interested in coming to have a look at the Jumbulance. But I think while it's kind of being demonstrated, we can maybe just have a quick look ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So this is our Jumbulance. You can see we've got a giant ramp on the back. This can lift several tons of weight. So what we do is, you see the red marks?
Yeah.
We roll the ATI up onto these red marks, and then the whole platform will just lift up and then line up with the back of the ambulance. We can then just roll the ATI straight in, and there's stropping points all the way down the floor, so we can secure the ATI to the floor of the ambulance, and then we're ready to go. It's a very quick procedure, just a few minutes to get from the aircraft onto the back of the ambulance.
So this is kind of like, looking at it to my eyes, this is like a tail lift, but a really extended tail lift, which then rises up to the back of the Jumbulance, which is kind of, I mean, I get why it's jumbo. It's sort of more akin with a sort of removal lorry sized back.
Well, yeah, this is just a giant LDV van. We can actually get two ATIs on at the same time. So if you've got a friend with Ebola, we can bring them along as well and do two in one move. So yeah, it really is big. We can actually reconfigure it. It's got more uses, so we could take 4 regular patients in one go if we had to.
Can we jump inside and have a quick look round?
Yeah, should we use side door?
Yeah, that sounds like a better option. So we just have to cut through the people who've gathered round to look. So it's got a side door. So we're up the steps, and we're inside now. So it is really big in here, isn't it? And I can see these stropping points you mentioned, which are kind of like a sort of ratchet type lock.
Yeah, so it's quite a clever system where the whole floor has got these strips down which the ratchets click into, so we can actually reposition the ATIs. We've got standard positions, and again, it's all by red marks on the floor, but we can position it pretty much anywhere we want within inside the Jumbulance for our convenience.
Let's just move down a little bit just out of the wind. So, it is big in here, but now you said about having 2 ATIs, having just been in one, they're quite big things. Obviously, I assume care to the patients is continuing at this point. Is this quite a confined space to walk in, even though it is the Jumbulance?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see I've got my nurse's seat there. Your head will be right close to the nurse there, and they'll be keeping an eye on you the whole time. I can put a second seat in here and a second ATI, but then room is really limited. I've got no access to the left-hand side of you, only to the right-hand side and your head.
Wow, okay. And just the final part of the journey then, so when we actually make it to the hospital, there's a handover to the hospital at that point. Just tell me what happens before you guys can kind of stand down.
So we arrive at the Royal Free, the ramp goes down, we'll wheel the ATI off the back, and then the matron will be waiting for us. They're really experienced. They've been looking after viral hemorrhagic fevers for years and years and years. So at that point, we just do as we're told. We'll get you inside the hospital. They'll clear the whole hospital for us. They'll shut it down so no one can get anywhere near the ATI. We'll get you upstairs, and then we'll use a special transfer sleeve so that the seal is never broken, but you end up inside the NHS bed.
Well, I tell you what, it's been so great seeing this, but hopefully I never have to use it and will never go in it again.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Well, it's been a really interesting day today here, and it's almost time for me to head off. But before I do that, there's one last thing I want to do. I want to head over to the RAF Medical Reserves stand and just see the type of interest they've had from the other medical professionals here today.
I am AS1 Katie Robson. I am a reserve medic with the 612 Squadron at Lookers. In my day job, I'm a paramedic with the Special Operations Response Team within the Scottish Ambulance Service.
So you've been here at the conference and you've been on the stand and you've been sort of answering people's questions who are interested maybe in joining. But I want to start by asking, why did you join?
I think initially I joined because I was looking for kind of a different challenge, something that would challenge me in different ways that I didn't get in my day job, but also sit alongside my day job and kind of tie things in together. But I've actually been very surprised with the RAF and how different it's been to my day job. Like, obviously, as I said, it does kind of supplement things on the side, but I also do feel like I get a sense of like release from the day job. It can be really busy out in the NHS just now, and as much as I get some extra training that I can take back with me, the RAF just gives me that safe space to kind of relax and go back to work at the end of the day a bit more re-energised.
And what's the level of interest been? Like, how many people have you had coming up and asking you questions?
We've actually had a really good amount this year. I think people are starting to see that benefit. Obviously, at a conference like this, you're surrounded by like professionals who already have a busy schedule. And as I say, people are starting to understand the benefit of that they're not just going to come here and give up even more of their time and be even more tired because they are getting benefits back from it.
What type of people have been coming up to you then?
A good range. We've had quite a lot of paramedics, quite a lot of doctors and consultants and stuff have been interested, which is good because that's exactly what we're looking for just now. We're trying to kind of get more skilled workforce in. But yeah, really wide variety from just paramedics that are on the road to air ambulance, intensive care, etc.
What questions do you find people typically have about it? Are people quite well informed, or is it sort of a new thing that catches their eye?
It kind of depends. You tend to get two groups of people. You've got the groups of people who've just seen your poster and they want to know kind of anything or just a general amount. Or you've got the kind of people who have already seen it, want to apply and they want to know more about the process. We get a lot of questions about like medicals and things like that, or what the basic training is, because obviously at something like this you are looking to recruit specialists, but as it is a military role you do still have to do that basic military training, and a lot of people kind of have a lot of questions about what that aspect is.
So are you expecting to see some new colleagues in the coming months?
I hope so, yeah. I think there was a lot of recruiting done at the bar last night, so whether or not people will remember it, we'll see, but hopefully.
I'm Wing Commander Mark. I have the privilege and honour of being the Officer Commanding of 612 Squadron in Lookers.
And today you've been here on the RAF Medical Reserves recruiting exhibit here. What kind of interest have you had so far?
It's actually been pretty good, I have to say. The conversations with obviously busy clinicians have been really interesting, and you know the point we would try to make is that it's being in the reserves for a clinician. It's often, certainly in my experience with the guys on my squadron, it's a decompression from their really, really busy day job. A lot of clinicians who don't understand the reserves have a perception that it's a big demand on their time, but there is some demand on time, but in reality they get such a break from their day job that they go away fully energised. So that seems to be quite a thematic conversation that we've had today.
And what kind of questions do you get?
Well, it's generally about commitment. What is my time commitment? Most people in the reserves don't do it for the pay. They wouldn't do it without the pay, but the motivation to join the reserves is much bigger than that. It's about service, it's about adventure, it's about the additional, for example, leadership training, leadership experience, the resilience that it builds in to you as an individual. So those are the sort of questions and conversations that I've been having today.
And do you find people who wander over, they've kind of got an awareness already of what the medical reserves are, or is it that they're here in a professional capacity and actually maybe they've gone to kind of one of the talks today, one of the demonstrations, or they've seen the stall and they've kind of gone, what is this thing?
Yeah, I find most people have done some level of research, whether it's speaking to someone they know who has been or is in the military. or a bit of a theme for today. Some of our guys are on HEMS, for example, across Scotland. So we've had some of their colleagues have come across, because obviously they've had conversations in the civilian workplace about what it's like to be a reservist. So that's probably been the key sort of, the majority of people today that we've spoken to have been colleagues of people who are already in the squadron, which is great. So, for me, the best recruiter for the squadron are the people already on it.
That word of mouth.
Absolutely.
And do you build on that with a physical presence? Do you think that helps? Obviously we've got online and we've got ways of reaching people now, but do you think it's still kind of grassroots, being on the ground and talking to people is the best way to recruit?
Yeah, I think it is. I think recruiting medical, senior clinicians, medical personnel, it's very much, it's not a transactional process. They're intelligent people. You need to, draw them in. You need to help them understand what does it mean for me. So I think the conversations are sort of quite an adult, sort of mature conversation, and that would certainly be a theme. And you can only have that through events like this.
And on 612, what do you look for in a prospective new member of the squadron?
Well, I guess when you look at the sort of characteristics, let's call it, of the people on the squadron, they all like adventure. They're generally reasonably fit in general. They're looking for something a bit different, and I think the military gives them all that. Plus, they develop new clinical skills as well that they wouldn't necessarily ordinarily get to in their day job.
And if someone has been here today, they've done a bit of research before, they've spoke to you today, and they go home and it's kind of, it's in their mind, what would you say the next step would be for them?
Well, I think, some of the conversations I've had today is, if you want to, come and have a look at us. So come and arrange a visit, which we're more than happy to facilitate. Show you what we do, show you the facilities that we have, and what it's like to be a reservist. We have contact details, telephone numbers. We have staff who can talk you through any questions you might have, any concerns you might have. So either pick up the phone, send us an email, or come and visit. We're only happy to help.
Hi, I'm AS1 Emma Kerwin, and you're listening to Reheat, where we take a look back at some of the RAF stories you might have missed. The Ministry of Defence has awarded a £300 million contract to modernise flying training. The Future Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition and Reconnaissance and Rear Crew Training System programme has been designed to meet the growing ISTAR and uncrewed aerial systems demands of the military frontline and provide the final pillar for the UK's military flying training system. The scaling of this service support will result in a fourfold increase in mission aircrew trainees to 140 per year for the RAF and Royal Navy. Next, we've got an exercise auxiliary force update, focusing on the 6 global enablement forces. This exercise aims to ensure our ground-based capabilities are ready to deploy rapid air power anywhere at any time. And the RAF have been working with the French Air and Space Force for the first time. The Red Arrows have been granted official approval to display for the public this year. It's after the completion of their pre-season and an annual assessment. The team have more than 60 displays and flypasts planned across the UK and mainland Europe between May and October. Next to Norway, where RAF Typhoons have undergone training as part of exercise Formidable Shield, the jets carried out drills with the Royal Navy and NATO ships and created tactics in a bid to improve NATO's defence against ballistic missiles. Chinooks from 18 Squadron have provided support to exercise Auxilium 4 held at RAF Honington. The exercise is designed to test the rapid deployment of air power ground enablers to a simulated, decommissioned airfield and ensure core skills for operational readiness. RAF Police Military Aviation Protection Officers are exercising for the first time on a live aircraft sortie. And a sergeant currently deployed with 140 Expeditionary Air Wing has been released from operational duties to represent the RAF at the High Rocks World Championship in Chicago. Sergeant Doherty is described as a standout performer in both service and sport who exemplifies the physical excellence, discipline and drive that defines the RAF. Best of luck from everyone in the Royal Air Force. You've been listening to Reheat for Inside Air.
Thanks very much, Emma. And now it's time to find out who's under the hat with the very busy Ben.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
Sergeant Sarah Burns.
What's your profession?
I'm based at RAF Leeming in North Yorkshire, and my profession is logistics.
What's the best thing about your job?
I think for me, you get the chance to see the world. I know that sounds corny, but you do get to travel, and logistics is so varied and it comes with so many different aspects to the job. So I like how every day is different.
Hardest part of your job?
Sometimes you're sent to not some very nice places. Location as well helps, but I think there are some negative bits to logistics as well. Some aspects can be quite draining. There are the exciting elements, but there are the good with the bad, if you like, as well.
Best location you've served?
So I have deployed quite a lot. I think the best one, as bad as it sounds, was probably Iraq. I was quite young when I went to Iraq, so it was the first place I'd never seen a war zone before. That was interesting, and probably wouldn't say it was the best. I've also deployed to Minad. That was fantastic because I got to see Dubai, which again, not many people do, and I was posted to Cyprus Secretary for 3 years. So I was quite fortunate to get that posting.
What bit of luxury kit do you never deploy without?
It's got to be my hair straighteners, yeah.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
My proudest moment in the RAF was when I was chosen to represent the Air Force in show jumping and dressage. The RAF is fantastic at promoting sport, and I have a lot of pride with what I've achieved through equestrian.
Thank you, Sergeant Burns, for being the latest aviator to take part in Under the Hat.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review, subscribe via your favourite podcast app, and then join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.